mind standing for a moment of silent reflection and remain standing for O Canada? Thank you. We have the adoption of minutes. Closed and regular meeting of council held on July 28th, 2020 be adopted as presented. Councillor Reno, Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? That carries. Thank you.
Your worship, with one amendment, please. Could it be noted that those minutes are not for the July 28th, but they were for our last meeting, which I believe was the 14th.
Sorry, Jeff, do you have a conflict? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry, Jeff. Thank you. July.
I do not have a conflict. In the minutes, or excuse me, in tonight's, it's listed as the 28th.
Correct. Thank you for that. July 24th be adopted as presented. July. Don't do as I think. July 14th be adopted as presented. And mover, it was Deputy Mayor Malash, and seconded Anita Dicio Spagnolo. All in favor? That carries. Thanks again, Councillor Reno, for that correction. No presentations, public meetings, or delegations. So we'll move right on to report E1 encroachment agreement, re 1370 Hazel Street. Dominic Dedal.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The report before you tonight is somewhat self-explanatory, but I will kind of go through some history and some detail as to, I guess, what the whole idea of encroachment agreements are. We have about, I think we have over 50 different agreements that we have on the record throughout the town. There's a couple different types. Usually it's, say we have a town-owned lot and somebody needs access with their driveway or some other means to their property, and we allow them to encroach on our right-of-way. The other example, and that's what we have here tonight, is where we have an easement and we allow someone to encroach over our easement and just acknowledge kind of what exists in that easement, and that's what we're trying to do here tonight. In this situation, usually we put a bylaw on and we enter into the agreement and we can just go forward like that. In this specific situation, we have some conflict between neighbors that we felt that the best course of action was to just make sure that all of council was informed and involved in terms of the process and the decision, the final decision that comes through tonight in terms of how we finalize the agreement that we'd like to do here. In this situation, the owner on Hazel has a number of items that are through the easement. Our easement is for underground services. Like there's a sanitary line that is, I understand, is rather deep underground. So nothing that we have to access on a regular basis, but it's certainly there, and we'll have to get to it I assume at some time in the future. And what we would like to do is just kind of recognize the items that are within the easement itself. However, as you'll note from the figure that I attached, there is a substantial part of the town right-of-way from Hazel Street goes onto the front yard that we would like to have cleared up. And we've met with the owners of the property, and we've explained to them that we are prepared to enter into this kind of agreement, but we would like to have the right of way cleaned up. And as you'll note, the neighbor has also submitted a recommendation in terms of what they would like you to consider tonight in terms of the remainder of the items in the front yard. But ultimately, I'll leave that to your discretion. I will note that the fence that's in the front yard is legal. I think it's only 4 feet high. It denotes the property line up until the where the right of way begins. So that's why we had no issue with the fence itself there. And then mulch and landscaping, that's pretty common in terms of maintaining your yard to have an aesthetic that you're looking for. But obviously, this is you have both submissions and both sides of the story in front of you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Dominic. We'll open up to council questions. We'll start with Councillor Reno.
Thank you. Dominic, if you may, I just want to confirm that fence and the landscaping material is currently on the easement, correct?
So there is a number of, the fence is on the easement, yes. Landscaping, there is a number of, a portion of it on the easement, but a lot of it does run all the way up into, I think it's all the way up to the roadway. So it is through our right of way, and that's the portion that we're going to ask to be removed. And that will be outside of this agreement. That's just something that we're going to request of the owner. However, there is some that is within the easement towards where the 4-foot fence exists, yes.
Okay, and a follow-up question, that easement is registered on title, is that correct?
That's correct. It was registered. If you'll give me a moment here, I can tell you the exact year. That was put on title in 2015, yes.
Okay, so my final comment is both neighbors knew very well of the agreement. It was registered on title. There's no way that they should have missed this or misunderstood it.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you purchase property, your lawyer should do a title search and let you know that this is an easement that exists on title, and it restricts the use of your land in that area.
Thank you for clarifying.
Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you, just to Dominic, then you said that the lawyer has the responsibility to explain to the property purchasers what that easement means. So we have to, assume that both owners knew that they weren't supposed to put anything there?
That's correct. I mean, at the end of the day, even if your lawyer does or doesn't, I guess, disclose that to you as a property owner, you're responsible for what you are putting on your property and what may lie underneath there. And that's why the language of the easement is very clear in the sense of, we say these things are not allowed. That's one paragraph in the easement, that nothing is permitted here. And then you'll note that the following paragraph says that, however, if somebody does put stuff here, that we're allowed to go in and take it out at your expense as the owner. So it kind of allows for these kind of events to happen. And that's why when I speak about the other encroachment agreements that we have in town, it's when this kind of stuff comes up, and usually it's not contentious, and we can just do a kind of agreement, and we just recognize what's there, and off we go. Obviously, that's a different situation, but that's kind of the background thought, I guess, in terms of how we came to this decision.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Councillor Akpata, then Deputy Mayor Meloche.
Through you, your worship. So just to echo my friend, Mr. Reno, the easement was registered on title. It is understood what an easement is because it's on the title. And as such, there should have been no construction, fencing, anything placed on these easements in accordance with what was on the title from the beginning.
That's correct. In terms of the easement language itself, the only exception that it specifies clearly is actually the driveway on the neighbor's property.
And so supplemental, can you explain to me what it says specifically about the driveway as well?
The individuals who own what's called Part 11 on that reference plan, which is the neighbor's property, may construct a concrete or asphalt driveway and or driveway approach on that part, but it does not speak to part 10, which is the part that we're discussing here tonight.
Thank you very
has made use of the easement and without asking for permission. So typically what has happened in the past with these types of easements is residents who are aware of the easement will approach the municipality to enter into these encroachment agreements prior to them building anything on these easements. The municipality has entertained that. And that is actually what we're proposing here tonight, is to enter into an encroachment agreement to recognize what is on the property at 1370. If it was done properly from the beginning, this would have been before council, and one property owner would have requested, it wouldn't have been a public matter, and administration would have recommended entering into an encroachment agreement with the homeowner at 1370. 1380 has the same right to enter into an encroachment agreement and make use of that easement in the nature of what is available to them, and enter into a separate encroachment agreement with the municipality. Typically, it's done before work is done on the easement, but this came to our attention after the work was done. So we're getting the paperwork caught up with respect to this matter on this particular item. This is very typical in LaSalle with a lot of the easements we have, and some of the nature of the easements, because they are easements in our name, but they are privately owned, and they form part of people's backyards and side yards, and where possible, we are striving not to have easements, because we recognize that this has become systematically an issue for some of these areas, but in certain cases, it's just almost impossible to not have easements. So I just want to add a bit more context regarding this matter. It's just I guess the process for this is a little bit backwards compared to what would have occurred if they would have asked for permission at the beginning. We probably would have certainly administration would have recommended to give them permission to use the easement.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Deputy Mayor Milosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. So looking at figure 1, the red area is the easement. The other area we're discussing is the right-of-way. Can you explain to me exactly which area is the right-of-way and what does that mean? Now, I fully understand encroachment. What does right-of-way really mean? What can they and can they not do?
So the right of way, it just, you'll see immediately to the right of the red figure there, that everything to the right that forms part of Hazel and Kenwood, it kind of bubbles out. That is the right of way. So it's just an extension of the street. That's where we can put in, typically services go there. If we ever wanted to do sidewalks, that's in the town name. And we prefer to have that cleared in case we ever need to access it for those kind of reasons. Or if some, for example, won't happen here, I don't think, but road widening, that kind of thing, we're entitled to use that space as we see fit. So like I said, typically, I think in this situation, there's probably some services there that run underneath in that area, just off the street. So that's usually what entails in the right of way area.
So what you're saying in this is we're going to agree to the encroachment agreement, which is the red area, but not officially part of this, but we're going to go back to the owners of 1370 and ask them to remove anything that's on the right of way?
That's correct. And we've discussed that with them and made that clear with the owners in meeting with them, and they seemed agreeable to going forward under that agreement.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up to that is the owners of 1380 who have submitted us some pictures and a letter about, I guess, what would make them happy, which I'm not sure I fully know what both parties want, but I guess from what I'm reading is they're like, okay, we, whether they can or not, agree with the encroachment agreement, but they're requesting that that landscaping directly in front of their home be removed, which is actually in the easement area. We're not asking them to remove that portion. We're only asking them to remove what's in the right of way.
Correct, because what's in the easement area, so if you're looking at that figure 1, you'll see a black line that follows the current fence line in the rear yard that goes up to the front of the red. I'm not sure if you can see that there. So that's the property line. So everything to the north there, that is the property of 1370 Hazel that we recommend is allowed under our encroachment agreement. That's their property. That's not 1380's property at that point. it's only when it crosses into the right of way area that it kind of blurs the line of where 1380's front yard is versus where 1370's front yard is, where ultimately it's the town land. So that's why we want to clear that portion, but allow what's in that little box that's basically the black line that extends the fence and the red on 1370's side.
So my final question to you is, when we grant this approval for the easement, is there a way to grant approval only for the section that's in the backyard and leave the front yard to kind of appease both neighbors as far as what the look is coming out of the one home? Is there a way that we can do that, say, in our agreement, language-wise?
Ultimately, and that's why it's before council tonight. You can direct me how you wish the agreement to be prepared, however you would like. If you would like only the rear yard from where that side fence is all the way back to remain as it is and clear the front entirely, then that's what we could bring back to the owners of 1370 and say this is what the agreement is going to be. So that I leave that to council decision.
Thank you.
Councillor Carrick, did you have a question?
Yes, just a couple quick questions. So the tree that's planted in front of the house, according to this picture, looks like it would be on town property, but that's okay, right? So we're leaving that there, the tree, where the blue box is in front there, the one picture?
I believe that would be one of the street trees that's part of that we would have for any kind of subdivision area. Yes, that would stay.
And if I read the report and just double checking again, so the shed and everything that's illegal that's in the back are not, well, they didn't ask for permission, right? But in the future, if we needed to get in there for any reason, they would be forced to tear that stuff down at their expense. Is that correct?
Correct. And that's the terms of the easement itself says that too, but the encroachment agreement just kind of reiterates that and will firm that up. Yes.
Okay. I think it's unfortunate that they had the house designed the way it did. The garages should be on the right side of the house and the house should have been on the left. Then that probably wouldn't even be an issue at all because it would be flipped. But then there's the path, and I'm sure they didn't want to be by the path. I'm just guessing. But having said that, I'm comfortable with either way, either remove it all, past that portion, or remove what your recommendation is. I'm okay either way.
Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, I go back to the problem that, you know, it's a popular thing here to ask forgiveness than to be granted permission. And the fact of the matter is that this was registered on title. Everybody knew that this was to stay clear. I think I can't endorse this or this agreement as written. I feel that if I had purchased this piece of property, which I feel is slightly problematic the way it's laid, however, we probably approved it in the last 3 years. It's fairly new. Nonetheless, if I bought that property, I would understand that everything in that front red area, as well as the road, to have been kept clear. And the fact that the neighbor, that I believe, is saying, you know, everything in the backyard, you know, the sheds, the cement, the pool deck extension, all that stuff. The fact that he seems to be okay with that, and all he wants to do is see the front yard get cleared up, get some of that land there that's making a mess. I think it should be noted for council's information that this picture, as good as it is, does not have the improvements on it. It doesn't show that fence or how wide it really is now at 1380. And you know, looking at it in the other pictures, you can see that it's problematic. I can't endorse the. I would put a motion forward that we could that we enter into an agreement, everything that back to the side and rear of the house line, which would be that fence area, that we could agree to that, but I will not agree to.
Sorry, Jeff, you've been cutting in and out. So before I take any other questions, Jeff, can you clarify what you want done? Because you were cutting in and out. No one here could hear you.
I apologize. I would like to see the encroachment agreement rewritten to only include the items to the rear of the fence, which would be beside the house and back. Anything in the front of that, I've removed from the encroachment agreement and put back to natural state.
Okay, I got you. Are you making that as a motion? Sorry, Jeff, is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a mover. We need a seconder. Are those, okay, I see 3 hands up, so
Whoever.
got it. Is that a seconder?
Hmm.
Okay. On the motion, questions?
Yes.
Councillor Carrick, then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Yeah, sorry. I'm looking at the picture right here. This one.
Okay,
So I'm okay with that, other than that tree in the front has to stay. I don't want the tree by the driveway up very front. That has to stay. Otherwise I can't support the motion.
that tree, if I'm not mistaken, is planted by the developer. Is that correct, Dominic?
That is, as far as I'm aware, that's the case, yes.
Okay, so you're, just so I'm clear, Councillor Carrick, you're in favor of Councillor Renault's motion, but that one tree stays by the rock in the blue recycle box. Okay. Did I see Deputy Mayor Malash's hand up? No. Okay, Councillor Akpata?
My colleague, Mr. Carrick's motion is friendly to the intent of what Mr. Reno and I want, I believe. We don't want to get rid of trees, but I do agree that it would be nice to keep it. And just to sum up, from the fence to the rear is what is going to be left. From the fence towards the street, I will call that forward, shall be returned to a natural vegetative state with the tree that Councillor Carrick described left alone.
I'm looking at councillors shaking their heads, so everybody's in understanding what the motion is before we vote on it. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. So on the motion, moved by Councillor Renault and Councillor Akpata, seconded by Councillor Akpata, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Item E2, Kennard Water Main Contract Award. Mr. Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing too much to add to the report here. This is a water main we've been wanting to get at for a couple of years now, and we have some pricing, and we're happy with the pricing and happy with the way it's going to fit into our construction schedule this year. So I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Desjardins.
Okay, thank you. Through you to Jonathan. Just a quick question. Have we done work with Sterling Ridge before and we know we're comfortable dealing with them for this?
Yes, they would be formerly known as SLR, or even going back further, Smith Brothers Contracting.
Any other questions? Councillor Renault.
I'll support the motion.
Moved by Councillor Renault, seconded by Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Item E3, purchase of fleet vehicles for Water Department and Parks Department. Mr. Beggs.
Mayor, member of council, the report before you is for the purchase of 3 fleet vehicles that were approved in the 2020 budget. The pricing that we received through the bids and tenders website came in for all 3 trucks. The 2 water vehicles came in under budget, and the parks pickup came in slightly over budget, which we would fund from the fleet reserves. And I'm available for any questions.
Council's pleasure. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, seconded by Councillor Renault. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Minutes of a meeting of the Fire Committee meeting. Councillor Renault.
Thank you, Your Worship. We hadn't had a meeting in a little while. It was nice to get with the chief and the deputy chief for some updates. In that report, you'll notice that, we're still continuing with the same struggles that we've had for a few years now, where we're losing as many people as we're recruiting. However, my concern with the meeting was that we stay on schedule with our recruitment process. So we're not going to jump any guns or anything and go out early. We had bumped up our contingent a little bit the last time around. So we have a few more than we need. However, we are still losing them faster than we're gaining them. So thankfully, the chief put that buffer in for us so that we have the right number out there, and it's going to continue to be a challenge moving forward. Also, there you'll find the activity from 2 periods, which show that we were told that the reports for there showing that the call volume was down a little bit, which is surprising. With more people being at home with COVID, you would think that there would be more issues for the fire service, but thankfully they were down a little bit. And overall, it was a good meeting and a good report.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. Council's pleasure. Oh, did you move it, Jeff? Sorry, because you're in and out a bit. Oh, there he is.
I apologize. I'm off location borrowing Wi-Fi at the moment. So we are all good. I will move the motion to receive.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dicho Spagnolo. All in favor? None opposed. Thank you. That carries. Item G1, 2020 second quarter report. Tano's there? Oh, there. Let's look at that pretty face.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. The report before you outlines the town's financial position at the end of the second quarter of 2020. Attached are the town's financials and the town's list of capital items and summary of our reserves. Other than the effects of COVID-19, which are brought forward to council on a regular basis by the town treasurer, there are no other significant items to bring forward this time. And I am available for any questions.
Councillor Reno.
Tano, other than the COVID situations that we're aware of, are you concerned with anything on this report?
No, there's no concerns.
Thank you, Tano.
Deputy
I'll
Mayor.
move to receive.
Let's just make a motion to receive.
I'll second that.
Councillor Carrick. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Item G2, radio communication study summary report. Chief Sutton, how are you?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm great. As you'll note, Deputy Chief Thiessen is the lead on this project. However, he's enjoying some much deserved vacation, so I can speak to the report. This is a proactive piece for the most part. The report is intended to just be an update for council on the status of the project. Obviously, our communication infrastructure is very important infrastructure and often doesn't get a lot of attention or thought until it's not working. So proactively, we formed a steering committee among, and it's important to note, all the user groups within the municipality that use radio communications, being the emergency services, as well as public works and the emergency planning aspect of the municipality. So we went out to a consultant, as council's aware. They basically provided a current state inventory for us of where we are, engaged the steering committee in a discussion on our future needs and anticipated challenges, which sounds simple, but it gets quite complex. They came back and provided some advice on future technology and anticipated directions of municipalities and emergency services sort of globally, a big picture, and offered us some recommendations based on our local decisions that we may take in the future for future capital investment in the communications infrastructure. So the goal would be a robust solution that serves the needs of all of our user groups within the municipality, and ideally on a common platform that would address all our needs into the future. So with the final report from the consultant, the steering committee is now at the stage where we would go back and analyze those alternatives. As the report mentioned, some other yet unforeseen or not clarified details, such as the enhanced 911, next generation 911 that's coming in shortly. Some other known but not yet fully identified aspects of emergency services on a global basis, the future radio networks that are being planned and coming in. So the steering committee would look at as best we can at a number of those things and basically come up with some range of magnitude costs and some options and recommendations going forward to maintain stable and appropriate radio communications for all our user groups. And of course, that would then come back to council before any implementation. So it's a fairly large long-term project, and I would suggest some large capital dollars. But for the future of our communications for the municipality, it's a proactive move to kind of get that ball rolling and moving in the right direction for future decisions. So we're not left stranded if our current aging infrastructure we know is going to be in need of replacement in the not too distant future. So this is an attempt to come up with a solution before we're forced into something with very little time to react. So with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to you, the Chief. So just so we're clear, the communications that we're talking about here, this is for all our people in the town. Like everybody uses this, so that it's just not one or two little sections of our departments, right?
That's the hope, certainly. Currently, as members of council are aware, I think as the different needs and user groups have developed over the years, the creation of our current network has been somewhat piecemeal to satisfy the individual user groups as the needs come up. The approach that we're suggesting is, as you've suggested, more of a global approach for all of the user groups within the municipality, if that's possible. As we go down the road, we'll have to explore some of those peculiarities between the user groups and the other things that may enter into it. Excuse me, but certainly the approach would be the wise investment in a future platform that's going to serve everybody.
Thank you.
Councillor Akpata.
Through you to the chief, sir. So just to make sure that I understand, this is laying the groundwork to make sure that at least with our public safety agencies that fall under the LaSalle PSAP, that we're going to be compliant with the CRTC rules by 2023. And this is the initial stages that are going to get us to that level of compliance.
Yeah, in regards to the next generation 911 implications, that's certainly a consideration for this study. The police and dispatch are basically handling the requirements to satisfy and to be up to speed with that. I believe the indication is that with our current radio systems, we could conceivably be compatible or compliant was the word I was looking for with the new regulations. But certainly with the parameters of this study and looking forward, that's a big consideration, making sure that whatever platform we choose for the future is certainly compliant with not only next generation 911, but there's also a number of, particularly on the emergency services and public safety side, a number of enhancements, both with data and voice that are expected to come down the road in the not too distant future. So we'd be looking at all those eventualities as well. But the specific compliance on next generation 911 is something that the police and dispatch group have been assessing and keeping up with.
Thank you, Chief. Those are my questions, Your Worship.
Council's pleasure. Yep, Councilor Reno,
Move to receive.
seconded by Councilor Dicho Spagnolo. All in favor? None opposed, that carries. Thank you. On the 8 bylaws, the 9th being the second reading and the 10th. Oh, I missed the schedule of reports. Sorry about that. Summary of reports to council, item G3.
Motion to receive.
Okay, and there'll be on that, moved by Councilor Reno, seconded by Councilor Desjardins. And prior to the vote, there's an update by, you have a question, Sue?
Yes, please. In our previous meeting, we had someone ask about discharge of firearms. Is that the same notice that's on here from February of 2019?
The CEO is going to give us an update.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Again, the notation on the schedule of reports does refer to the discharging of firearms on or near waterways. Recently, again, representatives here with the town of LaSalle participated in a joint Zoom meeting with representatives of the Port Authority as well as the town of Amherstburg, as we all have a common issue with respect to this. So again, a little different in terms of our locations. Being a more active shipping channel here on the Detroit River, we certainly have some issues with respect to that, both from a commercial perspective and a residential side. And the town of Amherstburg has similar concerns. And so it was a joint call held with with the member of Parliament, Mr. Kuzmierczuk, in terms of what we could do to move this issue forward. One of the underlying issue with respect to solving this problem is that this doesn't necessarily it's not within the realm of the municipal sphere. It does involve the federal government with respect to the navigable waterways side of things, and so that's why that the meeting was called upon. And the meeting was organized by the town representatives of the town of Amherstburg. Their council in a very similar situation to our council with respect to their position at this point in time. So we do just recently we have been corresponding back and forth with the town of Amherstburg to put a joint submission into the member of Parliament to see if he can bring this issue forward to the representatives down in Ottawa. Again, that is on one segment of the issue. The other segment of the issue is the public meeting that was scheduled to be held. That meeting was, I think, preliminarily scheduled for the end of March, but that was just prior to the COVID pandemic hitting. And as a result, that has been deferred indefinitely until we can have a public meeting of greater than certainly 10 people and potentially even greater than 50. So from that perspective, that's where we sit at this point. We're in a bit of a holding pattern when it comes to the public meeting side, but we are working with our member of Parliament, with the Windsor-Tecumseh member of Parliament, as we again our border between Windsor, LaSalle, and Amherstburg certainly all have the same issue with respect to this. So behind the scenes, we're working towards that, but again, the public meeting we're just going to have to hold off until the restrictions under the pandemic are lifted.
Council's pleasure.
Move to receive.
We've already did that.
We already have a mover and a seconder. I apologize. So on the motion to receive, all in favor, that carries unanimously. Thank you. So we have 8 bylaws, and the 9th and 10th are the same, but we're giving the 9th a second reading and the 10th a third and final reading. Councilor Reno, Councilor Carrick, all in favor. That carries. Thank you very much. Council questions. Councilor Carrick.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Through your administration, We have the link on the town website in regards to the public being able to lodge complaints, inquiries. There's time set up where they can track it to see where it's gone and lodged. Is it possible for us to get a quarterly report as to what's been asked for, what we're looking at and the numbers, so that council is aware of how much it's being used? And also, if it's not being used that much, maybe there's a way that we can start promoting it a little more so that the residents have an opportunity to use that link if possible.
Yes, we'll get you a report. Thank you. Any other council questions? Councillor Reno, then Councillor Akpata.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've recently been contacted by a resident in regards to boulevards in the town. A lot of newer subdivisions include boulevards in the center of the road. A great example being Circle. A resident was wondering if it would be cost effective to put natural turf, unnatural, an artificial turf, if there would be any cost on the road. Personally, the natural material used. However, if there's a cost savings down the road, I would see a report come forward as to the benefits of putting in an artificial turf in those types of situations, because otherwise I believe the town would be able to cut and level them and like that, and they're going up and over curbs and things. It seems like there may be a solution out there, but not if it's going to be of great.
Mr. Mara.
Certainly, with Councillor Reynolds breaking up, losing I think he's referring to islands and things of that nature within the town's right of ways. We have been faced with a number of requests. Well, one in particular where residents want us to remove the natural turf and put in artificial turf. So that is one request that is coming forward. And I believe he's looking for a report to have a bit of an analysis done to kind of see what the benefits in that might be. What we do know is that the artificial turf is probably about 2,000 to 3,000 times more expensive than natural grass. Yes, we don't have to cut artificial turf, but you do have to attend to it once a year. And the environmental benefits relative to natural turf and things of that nature are still are not beneficial from that aspect. So, but certainly, I think to Councillor Reynolds' matter here, we could probably prepare a report and kind of discuss that matter as a general discussion on how boulevards are treated. Unfortunately, boulevards are treated differently in different areas because some people have associations where they have taken over in maintenance of those boulevards. So when people look at the various boulevards, some are not even done by the town of LaSalle, they're done by the association. So they have flowers, trees, they have landscaping, they have sprinkler systems, so they look green. They tend to flourish a lot better than just a typical boulevard where it just might be grass and trees. We don't typically water them. We would go in and cut them as our schedule once a week when the active growing season is, but certainly I think it's prudent to have a report come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Does that answer your question, Councillor Reno?
It does. That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Akpata.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Peter, I've got two questions. I know we did some mitigation in the 6,500 to 7,500 block of disputed. I drove by there. Peter, do you have any updates on the water containment and water flow work that was done behind those houses on disputed?
I think we're dealing with a couple issues on disputed. I think I know which one you're talking about. From what I understand is we have not received any concerns over the last few rainfalls from those folks. So certainly what was put in place seems to be providing them relief in that particular area. And that will continue to be maintained through the subdivision. As that subdivision behind them continues to develop, that will continue to be maintained.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. My second one, Your Worship. This is a unique one, not so much for Peter, but for maybe Mr. Solani. Time to complete a house build. I have a resident that's contacted me that indicates that a house build next to them has taken in excess of 2.5 years. They are living through weeds in the backyard, skids on the front property. They understand, they can see the progress, but can I get some insight from Mr. Solani or anyone on his team about the rules for building a house, how long you have to complete, and the care and maintenance of the property during the building time, please, sir?
Thank you, Councillor Ekpata. What it typically happens is that when the application is approved for a building permit, the builder homeowner has a period of time where they can proceed to complete the home. And that time is set out with respect to the building code provides some parameters with respect to that. Typically what happens is as we proceed through that, there's also requirements in the subdivision agreement. So if these are parts of subdivision, there is also implications in the subdivision agreement with respect to finishing boulevards and level grading and seeding the properties and things like that. But we do not specify a specific end date. But if it's abandoned, if the construction is abandoned and it's an unsafe situation, the chief building official has the ability to go in there and issue orders and boarding up the property and things like that. But what we can do for all of council's information, I could have our chief building official, Mr. Atwood, for the next council meeting, provide a little bit more detail and give some examples with respect to different types of construction, because different types of construction have different requirements as well. And whether you're in a subdivision or not in a subdivision also has an impact with respect to some of these timelines for the completion of works on sites and keeping it clean and free of debris and things like that. So if you would like that, we could have that for the next council meeting. We could have Mr. Atwood provide that in the form of a report for council.
Thank you, Mr. Solani. That would more than meet the requirements that I'm looking for.
Okay.
Any other council questions? Seeing none. Statements by council members. Reports from committees. Notices of motion. Confirmatory bylaw, first reading. Councillor Reno, Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? That carries. Second reading, Councillor Akpata, Councillor Desjardins, all in favor? That carries. Third and final reading, Councillor Carrick and Councillor Adiccio Spagnolo, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. You have the meeting schedule. Meeting adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.